All hail, Thabo, Becky. I've forgotten your middle Xhosa name. I would have mentioned that. All hail, Thabo Mbeki, the wannabe emperor of the continent, very stealthily, in many ways that many tend to forget, but are clear if you stare them in the face. They are just clear. First of all, he began the ANC with himself at the helm, very closest to Oliver Tambo. They began to peddle drugs in Southern Africa, in most cases Southern Africa. And there was a man of theirs who would be arrested in some of those capitals and of those countries. And the person who would be sent to go and bail this person out, talk the authorities, sweet talk them to releasing him, and maybe to say, we don't have funds, we can only sell drugs to make some funds for the liberation. And many people condone that I know in South Africa. And those people began to know that he's a weak point to their future entry in South Africa with drugs. When they were selling drugs around Southern Africa, I suspect that the drugs were being supplied by Nigeria because they never went to sell drugs. There's no history of them selling drugs in Nigeria. You can't go and sell vegetable to the market. They have all kinds, that even vegetables that you don't know, and fruits that you don't know. Now he comes back to make Jackie Selebi commissioner of police without a day's experience in the police force, running a police. All he was a president of the Youth League. And then sooner catapulting him to be the chief of Interpol. International policing. Wannabe Emperor Mbeki with Lieutenant Selebi on the side, though he's not here anymore to hear me out. He does hear me out from the ether. I hope he colludes with the gods to correct what's happening, the mess that they have left in this country, and collude with the mission to ultimately destroy Thabo Mbeki. Because Thabo Mbeki keeps on selling himself out like a fool, the most clever person that others reckon he is. He's telling the story lately of Oshkosh, who was taking drugs into his own pocket, into his own satchel bag, of those who were trafficking in places like Zambia. And he says he went to bail out Oshkosh. All those who are selling drugs were being bailed out. Were we so desperate for money in the ANC when there was a lot of overseas aids and enough guns? Because drugs, I don't remember drugs buying guns. All you needed is to have enough guns. Nah, he is talking of Oshkosh. This is the man who has always wanted to be the emperor. And Jacques Selebi, when he comes back into the country, some of his friends and consorts are people like Glenn Agliotti, a drag king. And Thabo Mbeki gets a present of Floshem shoes from Agliotti, and he wears them in his small feet. He wears them. When he fired Jacob Zuma, I think he was wearing those Floshem shoes. Behind the stories of he and Joe Modise sending young freedom fighters, young cadres, out of Swaziland to come and buy them Floshem shoes in Nelspruit. How ruthless these people could be. They could be as ruthless. In my mind, I've been trying somebody who has been ruthless and was uncovered, even in the Bible. 2 women were sleeping with their children. Another one was drunk. She slept on her child and the child died. Then when she realized her child has died, he claimed the child of another. They went to King Solomon with their indaba. And King Solomon looked at them for some time. And when he could not come with an answer, there was no DNA test those days. He said, okay, I'll cut the child into 2 pieces. One, oh, the other woman screamed, and the other woman pretended to be just hurt and did not scream. And she said, yeah, which means take away this woman's child because I have killed mine. The moral of the story is, come and kill my people as much as I have already killed yours with drugs. Come thou Nigerians, the great drug lords of the world. I was in New York in 1995 when I was off Broadway walking around, because I always, when I go to America, I make sure that I go to Broadway. I find it exciting and exhilarating. And one man said, are you one of these Grigambas? I said, my goodness, how can America mention the name Grigamba? Where do they get it from? And I cross-questioned him. It was very clear it was a name sold by South Africans to the African Americans. I said, no. He says, man, there's trouble in America because of these Grigambas. Trouble everywhere. Trouble, master troublemakers, sorcerers, high priests of sorcery, found in Nigeria, that is all over South Africa. Now, when these people, Thabo Mbeki made a deal with Mugabe that some of his people should be gotten across Limpopo to come here in South Africa, why didn't they have a plan? Why was there no plan to control their movements and so a joint plan? Because Mugabe had destroyed his country, and he was saying, these are the remnants of my destruction, and can you house them in South Africa? Thabo would have said, yes, we can house them, but we must have a plan of control. No, there was no plan of control. And today people are saying stakeholders come together to discuss this question of foreigners. Stakeholders, most of you who will be called to an indaba of that kind are not in the townships. You will be some rich men some clergymen, some politicians, and we can't trust you all. All of you cannot be trusted. You cannot be trusted. If your child is not hit hard by Nyaupe all over the country, how can you be a true stakeholder? How can you have the credentials of a stakeholder when your child is in tertiary education, might be doing designer's drugs, but those who are worse off than anybody else are in the townships, in the gutters of the township? Where will you get stakeholders out of the township? Can you get somebody to understand even the word stakeholder? Can they understand what stakeholder means? Because all you politicians cannot sort it out. Now you are busy trying to impeach Ramaphosa, who's part of the Thabo Mbeki brood that has presided over drugs. Because most of those refugees, some of them are economic, we understand that. But most of their top dogs are drug refugees, drug peddling refugees. They came here for business, drug business, so-called refugees. These guys are in business. And you cannot call them to an Indaba to discuss this thing. You cannot. Some will be afraid to risk their lives to go there because they will be mowed down as soon as they leave the conference hall. They will be hunted down by the most cruel, cold-hearted, tentacles of Thabo Mbeki. They will be mowed down. Ramaphosa is a silent boss. He never showed his colors. He has appointed Nhlanhla Mkonazi, and Mkonazi is doing a good job, the best ever. And he wants to be patted on the shoulder that you gave us Mkonazi. All he knows is how to skillfully dig out of the problem. Dig out of the problem. What he knows is how to wear a veil of a priest, a priestly president who quoted the Bible and the popular hymn Tumamina when he stepped in to come and kill our children. You guys must be charged for treason. From Thabo Mbeki, I'm not real sure as to how the one that you called a state capturer, Jacob Zuma, even if I don't like him at all, I'm not very sure how can the question of drugs be put at his doorstep. But he might have been seeing everything until he's denuded, until he's exposed. I'm not sure to what extent. But to what extent is Thabo Mbeki a drug lord and Ramaphosa a drug lord does not even have to make headlines. It is there. You don't need to paint them on the headlines of a Sunday publication. It is there. The people must rise as they say these people must be taken back to their homes.